All right, so the second to last leg of my journey was at the Volkswagen factory here in Chattanooga, where I still live. I worked in a department called quality assurance, specifically field analysis, and basically all the manufacturers have a department which is monitoring the warranty data for their cars to see what parts are getting replaced and what issues are cropping up. And then they have a team of engineers who are investigating why that's happening. And then they try to improve the quality so that it doesn't keep happening. And I know for a fact that all of the manufacturers do this, so this is not proprietary confidential information about Volkswagen. This is common practice across all the companies, and I know that because I've worked with people from at least all six, I mean the three major American, the three major Japanese, and several of the Germans, so this is common practice. So I was what's called a field analysis engineer. Basically, the statisticians in our department would start to see that we were replacing an abnormally high amount of AC compressors or evaporative emission canisters or fuel tanks or fuel pumps or headlights. And they would basically come to me with a data packet and say, okay, James, these things are starting to get replaced at a rapid rate, and we need you to investigate why. And so we would open up a topic. At any given time, I was probably working on 10 to 20 topics. Some of them would get solved in 8 weeks. Some of them took us several years to fix. And so the role that I had there was sort of half analysis engineer and half project management or project management. And so basically we would get the parts back from the dealerships, and sometimes we could do some of the analysis on our own. It depended on how complex the part was. There's a chemical lab there and a measurement lab there, and we could put the parts on cars and see what they were doing and take measurements. And then sometimes the parts were so complex or precise or couldn't be disassembled before they were further tested as a supplier, that they would go to a supplier. The AC compressor is a good example of that. It's an extremely precise part. It's assembled in a clean room. Thermally controlled clean room just for an AC compressor. It's insane. But and then you would kind of go into project management role, where you would be sort of following up with and managing the supplier as they analyze their own part, which is extremely, let's say, psychologically challenging, because a supplier of a part does not want to find that he has created a defect with his part that you're going to then charge him for. So managing an analyzer who is essentially biased against finding a problem will really stretch you as a person with your interpersonal skills. And then we would also basically escalate and present our topics to the CEO of the factory and the vice president of quality. So I was regularly standing before 80 to 100 people and presenting what was going on with my topics. And I mean, sometimes it was a bloodbath. That'll, in a emotional way, that'll really make a man out of you. I think engineers and production people and managers in the business world, they generally do not wear padded gloves. They don't encourage you for doing a good job. They will scrutinize your work, and they will call you to the carpet if you don't have facts and data and evidence. They will call your work shit if it is shit. They will not mince words, and you will leave blushing with your tail between your legs if you do not come prepared. And through that, I think that I gained really thick skin. I learned how to sort out the the person from the topic, and there was three guys in quality assurance I have an undying amount of respect for: a guy named Michael, a guy named Marty, and a guy named David. And if by some act of God you're listening to this, you'll know who you are. They were supplier quality engineers, and their job was to manage the quality of our vendors. I mean, there was like 40 of these guys, but these three in particular. And these guys, they would rip the suppliers a new one, because the supplier would have built a part that was the wrong dimensions and was out of spec, and they would just tear into these guys like you couldn't believe. But they were so respectful and so kind. Their sort of contempt was always focused on the product and the process and the result, and never on the person. And it was, there's that Bible verse that says, "Be as harmless as doves, but wise as serpents." It reminded me of that. They were so compartmentalized to never berate the person, but always berate, the results that were bad. It was absolutely incredible. I have so much respect for those guys. It was incredible. Anyway, so I did that job for 6.5 or 7 years. I can't remember now. And it's very, very, very satisfying work. It was also where I made the most money. So you can see it in that Excel table that I told you I published in one of my older videos, where I showed you every dollar that I made at Volkswagen. My salary got up to something around $90,000 in the factory, and then in May they would pay bonuses that were like 25 to 30% of your pay. So I'd get like a $28,000 gross before taxes check. So I made really good money at the factory, and that was how I paid off my house, and that was how we saved a lot of money. Now, as soon as I moved to Chattanooga, my wife was nearly due with my daughter Rebecca, and I started going back to school. I started going to Chat State Community College, and I started doing physics and calculus. I did Cal 1, Cal 2, linear algebra, physics, statistics, a couple other prerequisite courses, and I did great. I mean, I got straight A's. I worked my butt off. I wanted to learn the material like you wouldn't believe. I didn't care about the grades. I cared about learning the content, but when you learn the content, you get the good grades. And I really, for the first time in my life, achieved, academic success. So I was taking classes kind of one at a time. I took classes off during the busy season and when we were having children, because we had Rebecca and Paul during that time, and I wanted to be there for my wife. And I got to the point in that field analysis job where I'd sort of seen everything once. When you're new at a job, there are things that happen, they blindside you. You kind of say like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And then there are things that you've seen before. And I kind of got to the point where I'd sort of seen it all before and wanted something new, wanted a new challenge. And the vice president of engineering at the time had observed me in some meetings and sort of worked with me just a little tiny bit on a few topics, and basically offered me a job over in engineering. And in the end, I didn't actually take that job. I took a slightly different job, which I think was also by God's grace. But after 7 years of being in the factory, I moved over a mile down the road to the R&D center that Volkswagen has, called the EPC, the Engineering Planning Center. And that was my last stint at Volkswagen. And so I'll tell you about that in the last video.